if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. This is an oldie but goodie, and exactly what comes to mind when I think of this week's guest. Bryan Williams is joining us, and he's built initially his corporate career and now his own consultancy and advisory on the power of people, partnerships, and relationships. I've known Bryan for quite some time now, and I'm excited to see where his journey is going and has gone already. So he started with large organizations, built ecosystems, and now he consults for large brands and companies and build their ecosystems and their value. I'm curious, how did you get to where you are now? And more importantly, how did you know that partnerships is such an important aspect to growing a business?
Yeah, thanks, Petra, and thanks for hosting me today. For the listeners out there, I've been listening and consuming Petra's content for years, and she's directly played a big part into getting to this stage. So start off with a big shout out to you for all you've done. In terms of where, how I've made the evolution and the jump, and interestingly, so for my business, which I'll get to shortly, I'm about, I suppose I'm unofficially going for 6 months now, but I sort of made the transition, started officially in August. So around it's not an overnight thing. You don't just go to work one day, quit, and start and sort of going down this path and sort of consulting, or a new chapter, or pivot completely and just really get into it and expect results to sort of fly through. And so for me, I recognized a few years ago that the growing importance of building your brand and network, and how do you start to bring that to life. And in my prior life, when I was at Xero, I brought Petra in to sort of provide some consulting to the ecosystem around how they could all grow their profiles, to build their own personal brand, their company brand, and to go with it. And the evolution for myself is I recognized in that role and since that I can't do it all alone. But if I can build my presence and be top of mind increasingly throughout all the sort of conversations which I have and across the networks and what I care about, I know it's really an important strategic asset to be able to build and establish my company going forward, and also my personal brand. And I can proudly say that up until right now, I haven't reached out to anyone to actually grow any leads or business for what it is. It's on the back of content I'm putting out, or I'm featuring on webinars, or building my brand on speaking at conferences and whatnot, and sort of the word gets out that I'm available in what I do, and what I represent, and what I stand for, and an opportunity to come in on that. So that's the long-winded answer to your first question.
And I love it.
Yeah. And so in terms of the second question around like why partnerships for me and why have I gone down this route, is it's a gap that I saw in the market that evolved over time. In my 5 years at Xero, I increasingly towards the end was a lot of other companies were reaching out and saying, hey, how have you built an ecosystem? How has Xero built an ecosystem? What have you done to build a partnership strategy around that? How have you built a community around that? Why did you build a community around that? And what are some lessons? And can you help us in our company sort of move towards that direction? And it was a bit of a common theme, and some really big companies were reaching out and they'd want to sort of chat. And I thought, oh, hang on a minute, there's actually some demand for this. And they're looking around, there's not a lot of good examples across APAC of companies who have really had this approach. And so, over time, it sort of, and then Melbourne lockdowns, I did some ad hoc consulting where I just had a start in this space for a few companies so I got a flavor for it. And I've been involved with mentoring a bunch of startup accelerators, either Startup Vic previously, and the Blackbird Giants program, which I encourage anyone with some experience to get behind and help the next generation, help the ecosystem rise up. And through that, I really sort of start to unpack, all right, what are some challenges of companies? What's the common themes around it? And so for me, I realized that, A, there's demand in market. I realized that I do have experience I can apply to it. But the third chapter, which is what you advocate for, Petra, so well, is that I need to let people know about this. And so how do I build my brand and presence and be authentic and be able to talk to that message that there's an opportunity for companies to grow outside of either their digital channels, their direct sales teams, and to enhance and use partnerships as a strategy in order for them to unlock and achieve their sales ambitions of what they want to do, and drive the company forwards for where they want it to go.
So much gold there already, because it goes to show that you've got such a strong entrepreneurial drive from day one. Like initially, communities was always a nice to have, and nowadays companies are getting evaluated on how big and how strong their community is. And this is crazy, this shift. And also, what comes to mind for me, it's always, you've always been in high-tech organizations, and in this digital first world now, I think high touch and building those relationships and genuine partnerships is more important than ever before, because there is more competition, there is more choice. Why should I take this partner over this partner? It comes down to how well are you getting along with the bigger team, and how can you create value together? And you are doing that so well that you are connecting the dots, and that you see what can I do to add value to you first, rather than what can I get out of you. And this has always been a standard since I've known you.
Yeah, well, something I've always tried to lead with. 10 years back, I was working business development and cold sales overseas myself, and I learned in that time. I went and read all the books on referral strategies, and something I've always sort of led with of like, how in every meeting can I try and make 2 introductions or help the other person straight up with, and it's nearly like a guiding principle I use it to operate. And you think of, if someone's helped you out recently or in the past or across any facet of life, you kind of respect, remember, and you want to kind of help them organically as a human back in return. And in the US, in this space, there's a growing terminology of saying that, trust is the real data. And just to unpack that, what I like about it is, it's effectively, if you're looking to go to a cafe, restaurant today, or you're looking for a mechanic and anything, a dentist, a barber, a hairdresser, you're going to ask your friends or colleagues around where it is. And the reason why that is we're all overwhelmed with choice. We're overwhelmed with information. There's too much to navigate. And so if someone who you trust right now recommends something or suggests an idea or a holiday destination or somewhere to eat, you're not going to spend time looking at 100 options. You're probably just going to go where the recommendation is. And there's a power in that, and there's magic in that, and there's influence in that. And so on a company level or on a personal brand level, there's an opportunity for individuals or their companies to harness that for good.
Absolutely. And this is also what we've seen over the last few years, that the trust in traditional media has gone down, and also the cut through. Like companies can't just throw money at advertisement and hope that something is going to stick. So this is why the rise of personal brands for organizations and to build a company brand has been a growing trend, thankfully. It only took forever, but we are there now. And this is also what is a standout for me, that you've always looked ahead. Like you said, building a personal brand doesn't happen overnight. Building relationships doesn't happen overnight. What can I do now that I could kind of tap into later on if I need it? And I'm curious to know, when did you know that it was the right time for you to leave corporation? Because you've been in very senior corporate roles for a long time with very large brands. You've quote unquote made it, and it's like, nah, this is still not enough. I want to have more. When did you know about this?
Yeah, so around Christmas time, I sent an email out to a bunch of venture capitalists I know in Australia and sort of said, hey, I'm exploring looking at opportunities in platform strategy, partnerships, and building ecosystems. Can I help your portfolio? And so effectively, I pressure tested it, Petra, to answer your question. And I got a bunch of responses back with introductions to about 10 or 15 CEOs of scale-up companies across Australia. And I thought, well, I'm in demand right here. And so I've done some consulting. I've been through the journey of learning some startup challenges through some accelerators components to go with it. I've been building my brand, and now I've got validation introductions to this audience. And so for me, I was able to pressure test what it would look like in the field. So start off with that I liked it and that I could add value, and through the startup accelerators that we all know so much more than we realize in our day jobs, and we all wear so many hats across many tasks that if you take a step back and write down everything you've done last month, you probably overwhelm yourself. And that's applicable, and there's value to that to other companies. And so, I over communicated with the company I was working at Xero that I was going down this path. And so I was able to pull the trigger and make the move. And funnily enough, Petra, I was actually chatting to someone in the US this morning on this. It was a key video I watched, which made me sort of pull the trigger around it. And I've got a history of being a weekend warrior of endurance events, more so before kids. And there's the Spartan races, which a lot of us know, which are out there. And the founder of that's got a promo video, which of like the next race coming up, and he makes the point that everything starts with a date in the calendar, right? So if I say I'm going to start this company at this date, or I'm going to enter a long distance bike race or a triathlon or a running event, or there's a moment. And so, it was part of that video actually, which I'll share in the notes, of like, that was a trigger point to say, all right, well, as of the middle of the year, I'm going to launch into this program. And between now and then, I'm going to work out how to make it work and pull it happen. But I'd had all these lead indicators around that I'd sort of been building towards to be able to have the confidence to pull the trigger and effectively, I suppose, take the leap.
I love this approach so much, because if you are always dreaming about it, it never happens, because there's no hard end stop on that. And, so many are in a similar boat who say, I've got enough of corporate, I want to leave, but then, the security of a regular paycheck is still a little bit stronger, and people are staying there forever in 2 days. So putting the stick in the ground is actually a great approach to make this change happen, because nobody pushes you into it. Like, it needs to come from you, and nobody should push you, because then you're not completely committed either. And clearly you've made it work.
Yeah, well, I think, like, if you look at, like, let's look at the other end of the spectrum. What's the actual worst thing that can possibly happen? So you'll finish up an organization or your current job, or, there is a lot of layoffs happening in tech, especially in North America, and slowdowns. But if you've got genuine experience and you've got a skill set which you've been able to apply somewhere, and you're able to go into the market, if someone loses a job, they don't not work for 10 years. They go and they keep going at it until they find another job. And for me, for the worst thing that could happen would, okay, well, I'll finish up here. I can go down this route for a period of time. And if I don't like it, then I can go back and find a job elsewhere. Now, well, what about cash flow or commitments or stability and all those sorts of things, which is a common reason why people, and a lot of people still say, oh, I'd love to do that, but, with young kids or, mortgage or that component, like how long would it be before you actually went and got another job somewhere else and apply your skills there to go with it? And so it's realistically, it's probably in a short-term component to be able to do that. And so to actually bridge that gap financially, to test the waters or go down a path, for me, the risk was quite low. And, I've made a rolling start, because I've sense checked it and tested around it. And I've just picked up from where I was working corporate into this corporate world. And the big part of it, and the challenge, which I'm still sort of working out with a lot of your guidance and help, Petra, is like, how do you apply your knowledge and expertise as a full-time employee somewhere? How do you package that up and actually apply it to someone else and to a company in a systematic, commercialized framework for them to be able to understand, assess, and then deploy either in the short or longer term? And, I'm still, building out loud as I work through that, but I'm enjoying it as I go.
And so you should, because whatever happens next year, we don't know yet. We have to evolve. If we stand still, we are already dead and going backwards anyway. So it's an exciting journey. It's a never-ending journey either. And we human beings are wired for growth and learning. So you want to get experience, and then your value set also changes over time. Now, what I want to highlight is that you've got not one or two, but 3 little kids. Plus, you just went out on your own. And what I love about what you just said is that you've had trust in your skill set and in your abilities to tap into the relationships that you've built over the years to find another job. And often it starts there. Nobody will trust you if you don't trust yourself first. And you've done the groundwork already.
Yeah, that's right. And like, it is a mindset to go about it, right? If someone's listening to this, sitting in your job, and you're not really doing much to promote your personal brand internally or showcase what you have achieved and whatnot, when the time comes, you either want to get even promoted internally or explore other opportunities elsewhere or go out and do your own thing, then what credibility do you have? What trust can you build out? Who are you, and what do you represent, either as yourself or your brand? So you've always got to be forward thinking and moving forward, like you said, Petra.
And building the roof before it rains. And this is exactly what you've done. And even just communicating with not only your company, but also with potential future clients, validate, is there even an idea? And so many are afraid to get the no. I don't know what it is, but then it comes down to how can you communicate it in a better way that people understand what it's all about. Now, I'm curious, how did you actually land the first client and what did you offer them?
Yeah, sure. So, I did a bit of a sweep across my sort of networks and contacts. And, I was fortunate in my prior role where I had a good overview of what trends and whatnot was coming through. Like, I'm very fortunate. I'll be forever grateful for that. Like, when I used to chat to Facebook, they would say, well, we can see the ads volume and the traffic to go with it. And chat to Google, they would say, oh, we can see what the search results are. And AWS would say, oh, we know, look in the servers and what's spinning up. And each of them have got accelerators where they sort of find green shoots. And at Xero, we could say, what are the connections of various apps and growing, and where are some trends coming through? And so I'd have some insights. And so for me, I was able to sort of tap into that, and some which were building solutions, which was kind of like around the ideal product fit and the principles which I want to work on. I just had a conversation along the way that I'm going down this path and I'd love to explore working with them and to sort of open a door around to go with it. And so that was really the first one. And for the first few engagements and companies I've worked with, and I've worked with 8 now, which I'm looking at, and with a lot of growth to come next year. Behind the scenes, I'm doing my own retros nonstop. And so, as I mentioned before out the gates, I'm using the lean startup methodology myself and sticking closely to that book of just talking through like, all right, well, what worked? What was the real value? What did they like about it? What do they want to deploy next? What didn't they like on that level? And then also it's like, oh, how long did that take? Am I mucking around with too much proposals or back and forth? Or why are we having a few too many meetings? How can I shorten that? And how do I streamline that? And that's the working on the business stuff, which I quite enjoy, but takes time.
It does take time, but you cannot make a decision before you have experienced anything. So doing a bit of a beta run and a trial with a client and see, oh, this actually took me a lot longer. Now I know it for next time. And you're such a reflective person. You don't just run into the next project, but you see what could I tweak a little bit and then moving forward. So as you said, it's all about this lean startup methodology that you can apply it to yourself. And often we overestimate how much money we need to make and how many clients we need to work with and all of that. And it's not even true. But that keeps us where we are. And as you mentioned before, it's all about the mindset that needs to be in touch before you can focus on the skill and the tool set.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I try and sort of think through that, like if I can over deliver on the initial ones, turn them into case studies, testimonials, build long-term relationships and then establish that trust, then how can I bring in, that'll set my success up for next year and ahead to go about it. And I don't have to try and stay away from have everything perfect to start off with, and just get into it and build out loud or learn as you go and refine. And, the business next year will look different to what it is now and to what it was 6 months and to what I thought it could become as well.
And one of the things that I absolutely love following the journey on is that you, as you said, learn and work out loud. People want to see behind the scenes. They want to cheer you on. They want to be part of the journey, because so many want to do what you do now, but then they don't do it. So seeing somebody who's done it before and see it's possible helps to get people getting over the line when they had this really bad day or this worst conversation with the manager, or they were, pulled up because they were late, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's right. And like, I think something that I've sort of shifted my own behavior is, I think it's a bit of an Aussie principle of like, people like to see people having a go, right? I reckon there's this like underbuilt part of our culture where it's like, oh, someone's going having a crack, I'd love to do that. Like, let's get behind and support them. And in terms of building my brand and network over time, what I've been able to leverage, Petra, is like, who's the best consultant out there that I know in Australia or I've seen around what do they do and how do they operate? And I've been able to reach out to them and have a chat and ask them more questions and tell them that I've like been observing how they operate and who's the best strategic person, who's the best commercial person. And so, there's a concept of building out your spheres of influence of people who are in and around you. And I've been able to leverage best in class experience from others and learn from them. So I don't have to make some mistakes. So I can sort of go faster or sharpen or even advice around like, stop wasting your time on these parts and like spend more energy in these efforts to make sure, especially early on with this lean startup methodology, around where do I apply my efforts and energy.
And this is such a great tip, because people often think they have to figure out everything on their own. And everything that we're doing has been done before. So why reinvent the wheel when we can fast track our journey and so forth? Now, I'm curious, is there anything that you would do differently if you had to do it over again?
Yeah, there would. I think some of the proposals, like of conversations I was having with a few companies, and I haven't won them all transparently. I started with to try and go too broad, too deep to start off with, and paint a big picture around it. And if it's a new company, or someone you want to work with, you've got to spend the time building that trust and establishing that trust. Just excuse me, I should turn that on mute. I should have spent more time initially, like maybe just doing some initial work to kick off with bigger projects and goals ahead to work forward. And so I feel, although you might have a trusted brand and authority and network to go with it, you still need to establish and work hard to establish that trust early on, that you're someone who is aligned to their principles and that you can help ongoing. And if you do a great job, then they'll want to keep you around. And so, so that's something I'm looking to sharpen, and how do I deploy that ahead based on some learnings.
So good. You're right. In the end, your brand is kind of the way in, because it's a promise that you get that when you engage with me or when I work with you or whatever. But at the same time, it still needs to match performance. So you can't just have this amazing personal brand and this name and this reputation and not deliver. Like, it will come back to you. Now, speaking of coming back, one thing I was really curious about, because we were talking about this Australian mentality that we want to cheer people up, but at the same time, one of the biggest concerns that especially corporate executives have is, but what if I'm either saying something wrong, or I'm building my brand and I get crickets? What do my colleagues say? What does my family say? They've got all those worries in their head. What would you say to them?
Yeah, it's a mentality, I suppose, around overcoming that. And I think if you're authentic and true to yourself and shine through with that, no one wants to read a sterile, boring content or position around it as well. Just be yourself and put yourself out there, and maybe even be transparent that you're putting yourself out there and you're having a go around it as well. But like it does have a snowball effect. So the more you can build relationships internally, or build your network, or build your brand, if you're able to offer others something in return ongoing and have that, then it grows over time, like the planting a tree methodology or principle, right? And so you have to feed and water it. But to overcome either any nervousness around putting yourself out there a little bit, it is uncomfortable. It's like if you're putting yourself into an outbound sales role, or you're a recruiter trying to headhunt people or whatnot, there's a skill set around it. But the more you can back yourself and just be transparent and authentic, then you've really got nothing to lose and everything to gain.
One of the methods in the three, or method with building credibility, is the on-the-go credibility, meaning you haven't got everything figured out, and simply saying that and say, you know what, I'm embarking this journey, I've got no idea what I'm doing, but I'm giving it a hot go. People are cheering for that, rather than coming out of the woodworks and say, ta-da, this is it, buy it. It's like, where does this come from? Like, this is more a sales message, and like, nah, go away. And then it comes across too sleazy or slimy, and we don't want that.
It doesn't resonate with people anyway. And so, wherever you put yourself out there around it, ask others for feedback. What do you think? Did this resonate? What would you do different? What's your approach or thinking on this? And learn and absorb. But you don't have to take it all in. But like, if you remain objective and where you're trying to head, then you're able to get input from people in and around you.
I think this is such an important thing to mention, because people want to help people genuinely. So getting feedback and not being too big of an ego and saying, well, even though I'm executive or I'm in a senior role, we still don't know everything. And, that's great. Means there's room for growth. Speaking of growth, what are the skills that you would say you want to focus on a lot more moving into 2023 with growing your business, getting into this next chapter?
Yeah, so I want to make sure, in terms of like my planning or what I want to achieve, that I'm spending efforts on the right things, and like, how can I scale myself or my services so I don't get as bogged down or have capacity issues to go forwards, right? And so with that, I need sharp planning, intentionality of how I work, and what I want to focus on, and look to ramp up that way. And the other thing to go about it is, if I don't have channels, or I didn't launch with channels. I just launched with my own brand and network. And so I've been leveraging, podcasts or speaking engagements or posting content and commenting on others ongoing, primarily on LinkedIn intentionally, because that's where my audience lives. Then I want to sort of make sure that I've got the opportunity to not be completely distracted by that and focus on some really great deliverables, but not have to do all the work. And so I'll likely put on some employees to help around the edges where I need to go about it. And I don't have the intentions at this stage of growing a massive team or empire, but I just want to work efficiently, sharp, and on things I want to deliver and work on.
Oh my God, music to my ears, because the one word that you constantly mention is being intentional about it, not being everywhere. We don't have to set up TikTok accounts and whatever. It might be in dancing around if the audience is not there. So being intentional with who do I need to speak to, what do I need to do to move the needle, and where do I need to show up to get the exposure that I need. That's all we need to do. Yep. Love it. Now, to wrap things up, what is the final advice that you would give anyone who is kind of on the border to, oh, I've got this very cushy job, but at the same time, I've got these big plans. What would you tell them?
Yeah, just it doesn't happen overnight. Test the waters. If you're in a corporate job right now and you've been thinking about the next step or doing your own thing or even changing roles or whatever, like, go test the waters. Go. If it's changing roles, go chat to a few recruiters and sense check around it. If you're looking to move, and do your own thing, go chat to a few people who who have done it 6 months, a year in, or longer, around what advice have had bridge. And maybe you could do like a short-term proposal or contract to test it and see if you even like it down this path and what it would feel like. And if you do that one, then you might do even get more opportunities, and then you've got just quite actually a linear pathway to go about it. But to your point, like, it's not realistic that you go from corporate job and just jump into something and it's an overnight success. You are building it, but that's also the fun bit, because it's always improving and increasing, and it's challenging and around it. And it's definitely, you won't be bored.
No, never. Because you have to wear so many hats. So, personal growth, start a business. This is the roller coaster ride that you're on for it.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
It has been exceptional. Thank you so much, Bryan, for all your insights, for your learning, for letting us being part of your journey. And I'm excited what's ahead for you in 2023 and beyond.
Thanks, Petra. It's an honor to be here on the podcast after so many years of listening in. So great to be here.
Thanks so much.